Hello and welcome to a quick video on old school optimization of 4D databases called Apply to Selection? We'll take a look at using apply to selection versus the array to selection command versus just going record by record and loading each one individually and setting values in each record and see how each of them perform. My name is Brent Raymond and I organize the 4D Method 4D in Wakanda user group. Come check it out at 4dmethod.com and see what we do. There's a short about page on our website and a little bit about me, but you'll see that we host regular Google Hangouts on 4D Method and Wakanda, 4D and Wakanda topics, and have some pretty neat demos. So come and enjoy that with us. So what I've got here is I've loaded up a demo database in 4D server because that's what we're going to look at first. And I've connected to that server on the same machine. So I've got server and client running on the same machine. So a little bit about optimization. A lot of us say, with faster machines and multi-threaded processing now with 4D, why do I care? Well, there's still a lot that you have to that isn't going away. Even though the machines are faster, we are still limited by the number of trips that any system has to make between a server and a client machine, whether it be a browser or a 4D client or any sort of system which is connecting to a central server. As well, you need to minimize the amount of data altogether that's being sent back and forth. But what you really get the best bang for your buck with is minimizing the number of trips overall. So we're going to take a look at the apply to selection command. You can see the actual documentation of the command. We'll just take a quick look at that. It's as it might sound like. You have in this situation you have a table of employees and you're converting the last name field to an uppercase version of the last name field, and in this case you're just repeating through it to show record locking, but that's as simple as it is. You're saying for that table you're applying a formula per se to a field. And in the documentation, you'll note that it says specifically for 4D server, the server does not execute any of the commands that may be passed in the statement. Every record in the selection will be sent back to the local workstation to be modified. That is pretty significant, and we'll see it's not only significant in server client, but it's also significant in standalone scenarios as well. Okay, so we'll look at another approach, which is using array to selection. I'm quite fond of array to selection. You can again see the documentation for array to selection by just clicking on the command and saying go to definition. So what it is you have an array and you're pushing the values in that array to the records in the selection in that table. It's very efficient, and I'll just show you the note in here that it is indeed optimized for 4D server. So you are only sending the array values over the air and not loading each of the records individually over and over again. So it has just a lot better of a performance, as you'll see here in the demo. So the demo itself, let's get to the code, is an idealized scenario. Again, I described the server is running on the same machine as the client, which is not something you'll probably see, but there is some efficiency gained there, perhaps. I don't know. It's still going out to the network and coming back, but that's sort of the inside of 4D, which I'm not familiar with how much of a efficiency gain there is there. However, again, an idealized scenario where you just have one table with two fields, a long int ID and a Boolean. That's this little lonely table here. So there's not much of a cost for loading this record. Many databases, very many databases, have monstrous table sizes where there's hundreds of fields in them, and just loading one record can be very costly because you're, in the end, probably going to end up loading every single one of the values in that table. And that's something you want to avoid, but we all live in the real world and have to deal with systems that may have been designed without sort of a wiser outlook on database design. I'll just say that to be fair to everyone. Right, so we're dealing with new records that will be created contiguously in one fell swoop in memory. And as you can see, there's just one table, so there's no relations. But all of this still certainly holds true when you are navigating relations. In fact, it holds more true than ever. So we'll see how it performs under this idealized scenario with just operating in server client. So the actual demo code here, we're just going to start fresh. We're going to truncate the table, which deletes all the records in it. We're going to generate new test records by just sizing a Boolean array to the test size, which in this case is 5,000 records, and pushing that array to the selection. Array to selection is also useful for creating new records, by the way, and also very optimized for doing so. Okay, then we'll kick into the applying to selection. We're going to set all of those Booleans to true with the apply to selection. These commands are just to track the time that the command took, that the actual action took. Then we'll look at how to do that with array to selection, pulling all of the records in the table into a selection, and then pushing the array into that Boolean, so switching it back from true, all of the records, switching that value back to false because we're pushing the original Boolean array up into the selection. Then we'll look at how fast it is to actually step through every single one of the records. So your typical all record, set the field, save the record, navigate to the next record for every single record in the table or selection, whatever the case may be. So let's take a look at the times. We'll run it. It's running right now. It's server client, so it takes a little bit of time. But as you can see here, we've got 3 different times. And I've got it written out a little bit clearer in my notes. But just so you can see, milliseconds 1 is 1733. That's the apply to selection. The second, the array to selection case there, it's 302 milliseconds. And the third case, it's 1231 seconds. So you can see that the clear winner here is using array to selection. It is check my math, but it's less than 1733 milliseconds. And for large operations, again, or repetitive operations, say you're doing something like this over a large selection or navigating large relations, you're still going to have a much more performant system if you even have to pull the values to begin with, selection to array, while navigating those relationships, doing some formula on the field, and then pushing the data back up, because you're going to minimize the amount of calls, the amount of server traffic, network traffic that you're generating on your network. And the more users that you have, the more important this style of coding will be, because it becomes exponential. If you have a very chatty application with a lot of records coming back and forth, say for reporting or setting values, then there will be a penalty to pay. Now, and just one last thing, because there's not too much that I want to show here. But again, that's what the times look like. But let's look at how it some of us run standalone applications, or you're just running a web server, and so this standalone would apply also to a web server. So let's go ahead and quit this, relaunch the sample database. Again, I'm using 4015.2, so I don't know if I said that to begin with, but that's what I'm using. And I'll launch this as a local database and run the same test. And you can see that even in a standalone setup, this second millisecond, 331 millisecond, is still considerably less than the other two approaches, being the apply to selection and stepping through every single record. Now, and you can see that listed here in the notes in the database. Again, I can't stress how significant it is that this is an idealized scenario. It gets a lot worse than this, to the point where you really start feeling how badly your system is performing when you're doing these kind of operations. Maybe you're editing records, maybe you're just stepping through them, but you're gonna get your best performance increase by starting to use array to selection and selection to array, whether you're running in standalone or server client. So anyways, that's the demo. Again, I'm Brent Raymond. If you have any comments on this, please let me know. Come see our YouTube channel for 4D Method, and check out the user group, and come and see us and show us some of your work as well.